Welcome back to Worrapat's podcast, everyone. I'm Arjun Mehta, and as always, I'm joined by the brilliant Anjali Kapoor. Today, we're diving into one of the most turbulent chapters in Thai history, Shadows over Siam. Anjali, I have to say the sheer number of coups and rebellions in Thailand between 1932 and 1957 is just staggering. 8 rebellions, 5 coups. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Absolutely, Arjun. And what's fascinating is that these weren't just simple battles between conservatives and progressives. The lines were constantly shifting. Old allies became rivals, and enemies sometimes turned into friends, all in the name of power and survival. It really was a time when, as they say, there were no permanent friends or enemies in politics, just permanent interests.
Yeah, and King Ananda Mahidol's reign. He was so young, just a teenager when he became king, ended up right at the center of all this. His position became this sort of lightning rod for all these competing factions. I mean, even his own family seemed to be caught in the crossfire of these political storms.
Exactly. And the thing is, the struggle wasn't just between the so-called conservatives and progressives. There were betrayals, shifting alliances, and honestly, a lot of personal ambition. Sometimes it feels like the real story is what happened behind the scenes, not just what made the headlines.
That reminds me so much of what happened in India after independence. My grandfather used to talk about how, in those early years, you couldn't really trust anyone in politics. One day, someone would be your comrade, and the next, they'd be plotting against you. It shaped how my family viewed authority, always with a bit of suspicion. I think the Thai experience was, in some ways, even more intense.
I can see that. And for King Ananda, being so young and suddenly thrust into this world of intrigue, it's almost unimaginable. His reign became a symbol, but also a pawn for so many different agendas.
Yeah, and the way the old power structures tried to reassert themselves even as new ones emerged just kept the country in this constant state of upheaval. It's no wonder that the period is still so controversial and debated today.
So, let's talk about the event that really sent shockwaves through Thailand. The sudden death of King Ananda Mahidol in 1946. He was only 20 years old. The official story was, well, ambiguous at best. There was chaos, confusion, and honestly, a lot of unanswered questions from the very beginning.
Yeah, the initial reports were all over the place. Some said it was an accident, others whispered about assassination, and then there was the claim that he took his own life. But the evidence was, it was so unclear. Even the people closest to him seemed unsure. There were letters from his mother, for example, that showed just how much pressure he was under, but nothing that really explained what happened that morning.
And the way the investigation unfolded, it's almost like the ambiguity was intentional. The fact that the final testimonies from the accused all supported the idea of suicide, but then those same testimonies were barely mentioned in later analyses. It's as if the narrative was being shaped to fit whatever political needs were most urgent at the time.
Right, and that kind of ambiguity just breeds conspiracy theories. Look at European history. Anjali, you mentioned something about that before?
Yes. I was thinking about the death of Tsar Nicholas II in Russia. The official story was clear, but for decades, people believed in secret survivors, hidden heirs, all sorts of wild theories. When a royal dies under mysterious circumstances, it almost always leaves a legacy of suspicion and rumor. Thailand was no different. The death of King Ananda became this open wound, fueling decades of debate and distrust.
And the timing couldn't have been worse. The world was changing, the Cold War was starting, and every faction in Thailand saw an opportunity or a threat in the king's death. It's like the whole country was holding its breath, waiting to see who would seize the moment.
And in the end, the lack of clear answers just made things worse. The investigation dragged on, and the uncertainty became a tool for political maneuvering. It's honestly heartbreaking when you think about how personal tragedy became public spectacle.
So, after all that chaos, the investigation led to the arrest and eventual execution of three men, Chit Singaseni, Booth Patamasarin, and Chaleo Patumros. The process was, well, complicated to say the least. There were multiple rounds of investigation, changes in leadership, and even rumors of forced confessions.